Good day, everyone. All right, I'll share out the link. We'll get started. Make sure everything's working okay. Hey, everyone. Everyone's quick on the draw. All right. Welcome to the live stream, everyone. So we're just going to look at Bitcoin, look at some alts. It probably won't be a super long live stream, but I'm probably going to get live every day this week, I think. So we'll do live streams all week. Let's start by looking at Bitcoin. It's really hard to be extremely interested in this chart in this local range for me. Sort of like you sort of want to see these lows taken or the highs taken. I should say that I'm very much in favor of a quick move to the downside running these lows. That just looks really appealing to me on the chart. But we have had quite big bullish divergences in order flow all throughout this. Obviously, perfectly possible to put in a higher low. So I think the simplest ideas are just sweep these lows, look for longs off of a sweep of these lows. There's quite a few different levels that you could run in a wick down into, take some of these lows towards the 786, the 886. Shared some of X-Force's bullish counts from something like that. And then would just be looking for weakness into this descending structure, being wary of a rejection, maybe considering setting up this trade with one leg having a TP, probably a point of control right in that region. And that might offer a nice setup, just wary of the descending structure. We could even get something like this to the downside as well. There is some bearish divergences forming. Someone's saying, okay, audio's working fine. Locally, there's some bearish order flow, so let's take a look at that really quick. I'd say it's pretty significant on these local time frames. See this big push up in CVD, some aggressive longs opening here, 18 million, some shorts closing, some aggressive shorts there, 42 million, 28 million. CVD is making a new high relative to price. It's kind of one of our bigger local bearish divergences that we've seen form in this whole section of the chart. So that's worth noting as we're coming down to support. Some aggressive longs opening, maybe looking for us to front run those lows, but some limit selling, absorbing some of that buying pressure. Trying to say a bearish divergence. Be interesting to see what happens if we take these highs. So from a local perspective, go to the 15-minute chart here. It is a holiday, so there's no, they'd say the live stream's at the New York Open, but there's no actual New York Open. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens up here. Maybe trap a bunch of longs. Get another move to the downside. Of course, we could just spend a lot of time ranging here. Come up, retest the point of control. I probably wouldn't. I mean, this is obviously scalpable. You know, you have a bunch of longs open up, but you really have to be looking at trading something like that almost, I mean, unless you just get a lot of weakness, more bearish absorption, but considering just trading it like this, right? So it's a scalp 0.5% move. Something like this pushing up to the point of control would be kind of interesting, taking this high. Yeah, I would say there's a good chance I would be shorting something like this if we have a big bearish divergence up at the point of control here. You have some nice confluence for the downside ideas out of this range. A push up, you know, we could even come down and take these lows, push up to the highs, nice fib confluence, the 618, you have the point of control of this whole range, aligning with the descending structure. Nice easy tight invalidation for just a clean rejection off that level. Trade it back down to the lows of the ranges. 5R traded with a stop above the 786. Give some room above these highs. And maybe consider holding it for a bigger move to the downside if we just break the range down. Something like that would be interesting. Taking the range lows would be interesting. And obviously for me, if we get it, it's a big swing long setup for me if we do break down and run these lows. Just as soon as there's any strength here and we start reclaiming this level, I'm going to start firing off long positions. Stop under the lows and just look for this to reclaim and carry on to new all-time highs. And if we break down, then I'll be cutting that position. I'm actually a little curious, how many of you think it's kind of a crazy idea to take these lows? And how many of you think it looks pretty likely? I see a lot of ideas. It's probably not that many. I mean, I don't see that many ideas, but I've seen enough ideas of us just rallying from this wick, and it seems like not that many people think running these lows is very likely. Yeah, someone says, is it possible that we don't take the lows and range to 101, 105? Yeah, totally. Totally possible. It's possible we don't take these lows and we, if you're referring to these lows, certainly. If you're referring to these lows, first off, anything is possible, obviously. But if you're referring to these, certainly. That X-Force count I was talking about, which is, I think, still its primary count. I haven't checked in a while, but would just be towards new all-time highs without taking these lows. It looks a little funny on the chart, not taking these lows for another major leg up. But we'll see. Yeah, so a couple things are kind of related to altcoins here. Somebody says the only reason it might be crazy is that it already took deep liquidity a couple weeks ago. Yeah, but relative to alts, it really didn't. And there's a second question about alts, which is what would taking those lows do to altcoins? Another 60%, negative 60% question mark? I don't think so necessarily, because alts ran much deeper than Bitcoin relative to Bitcoin, right? Like, ETH retested the low relative to Bitcoin's 50K low, right? So like relative to, this is what ETH tapped relative to Bitcoin here. And it's kind of funny. I'm not going to dig up the post or anything. I posted about it on Twitter, but somewhere back here, I actually, when I was talking about the idea of ETH coming back down to 2K, I drew out with some Bitcoin dominance confluence some ideas of Bitcoin pushing up to 110K and retracing down to 85K. And I just made the point that you could have a move like this up to 110K, Bitcoin down to 85K. We haven't hit 85K, obviously. And that could send ETH straight down it back to 2K. And I'm just saying people said that made no sense, but it actually does make sense because ETH's been so weak relative to Bitcoin and the structure is completely different. But anyway, so that's what we got. So that said, you know, ETH and many other alts have had these really deep liquidity runs. And so the question is, does ETH need to go down? If Bitcoin takes that low to 85K, does it make sense that ETH needs to go down to $700? It needs to drop another 60%? Probably not. It actually could make sense for ETH just to come down and retest these lows, right? Or fill a lot of this wick. And that could be said for a lot of alts. Like for example, on XRP, you could see something like this. We have this huge wick here. From the highs, it's almost 50%. Come take these lows. Grab this wick here. And I think that would be confluent and look kind of nice with a move to 85K on Bitcoin. So I don't think the liquidity that's been grabbed on a bunch of alts has been mirrored on Bitcoin per se. So I don't think the moves need to be that deep relatively. Like this would be from here another 12 to 13%. And so it's important to kind of keep all the context in your head here because yes, you could say in your head, well, last time Bitcoin went down 10%, alts dropped 50%, right? But those alts have already wiped out that major liquidity. So something like a 12% move down on Bitcoin and a 20-25% move down on some alts would make sense to me. I don't think you need to be looking for another 60% down. It depends on the alt, of course. Every chart is different, but and it's not atypical after these liquidity wipes for there to be something like this, right? This was a prolonged range, obviously, but where you wipe out the liquidity, you rally, and then you come back down and retest the lows before another move to the upside. If we wanted to make this a fractal, it's like this. You're not really surprised to see another retest of the lows. We can go back and look at a lot of these wicks. You have the wick, you have the big bounce, and price comes back down and fills most of the wick. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that on ETH and some of these other alts. You know, you almost want to say that it's not always the case, but it's often the case. Someone's saying it looks a little funny as that your intuition speaking. Well, it's I think what I mean is it's sort of like we go back into this rally. Of course, not every low that's established has to be taken, but put in a low, you range, you take the low, you put in some lows here, you take the low, you have another leg up. Here you could say you establish these lows, certainly establish these lows. You range, you impulse, you take the lows, take the lows. Here we had what ended up being a really bullish market structure. Actually got front run on like quite a few longs there. But here we form a range, come down, wipe out the lows, rally for another leg up. Here, obviously, everyone will remember this range. Same thing, take all the lows for another leg up. And so again, you have these kind of established lows. You could say this took the lows, which I did long that, but it just looks kind of cleaner just to run all these lows. Like I said, you don't have to, but it's a setup I'd certainly be interested in trading. Alternatively, you know, for longs, it could be just looking for more strength. Say, for example, we point out the POC here. Maybe you break out, you claim that. Maybe some long setups off that. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of hard to be super interested in what's happening here. It's kind of like you're interested in what's happening down here, maybe up higher. I want to talk about Trump a little bit. So I was thinking that there was some good chance of just seeing continuation on Trump, but this does not look. This looks corrective entirely at this point. And although I think we could still make our way up to these highs, I think it could take place in a corrective structure. One thing to think about is when you're talking in Elliott wave terms, corrective structure doesn't always mean price can't go any higher. It's just what's going to be the look. Like, there's a difference between what ends up having the look of something like this on Doge, where you're just in this really strong trending structure that's impulsive and straight up, and a corrective structure. Actually, I could go to FTM to make the point of where price went much higher, but the structure looked corrective. But anyways, let's keep looking at Trump here. So I think there's some ideas where we might just be in a big A, B, C correction. We're in the internal wave now, and I was kind of playing around with this a little bit. Some of you know I like clean ranges, and let me put on this. I like clean ranges, and I was just kind of playing around with what this would look like as a corrective structure. This looks really complicated. This looks a little simpler. It's just some ideas come down towards take these lows towards the point of control, maybe push up, take some highs, then come back down for the lows. Nice clean test of the lows, maybe tag the lows, impulse, reject. Now we put in a double top. Everyone's really bearish. We take the lows again. This is it. It's a breakdown. 1, 2, 3, 4 tests. Sweep the lows again. Get a big impulse to the upside, and then nuke for the downside. I'd like something like that. Nice clean range. We have an established high, established low. Why not form a range between the low and the high? And so I was just looking at some Elliott wave ideas, because I would be certainly interested in trading this as a range. And so I'll go over that briefly. I probably need to look at this a little more. I threw it together kind of quick. Let's get rid of this. I'll just hide it actually. There's lots of possibilities, by the way. I'm just looking at one here for corrective structures. But just imagining that we are making our way up towards a higher degree wave B. So we have a wave A, which on log scale here, this actually was our log scale GP from this high to this low SR test. This high was actually In another universe, I'm finding that short actually, but it was actually quite a clean rejection off that wick. But is what it is. So something like this would actually be quite clean if we this would be an expanded flat. But if we had an expanded flat in this subwave B, so we put in 3 waves to the upside A, and one of the reasons this looks corrective is it looks like a 3-wave structure, and this can't be a 1, 2, 3, 4. We've already broken below the hypothetical wave 1, so it's losing this, it looks corrective. But 3 waves to the upside, 3 waves to the downside, and maybe if you get something like this, where you have an expanded flat inside of this B wave, you get a nice ping off the POC. So I'm just kind of looking for where, not just thinking about the Elliott wave perspective, because there's so many corrective variations, but I'm just thinking about like what are the levels where you would expect to maybe see some kind of reaction, get a nice bounce, put some people offside. And if we put in an A leg down into this region, which is the 618 extension of wave A, subwave A, come tap this POC, take these really clean 4-hour lows, and then get a rally up through these highs. This then just gives us our 1, 2, 3, 7 of this local correction right at our range lows. So this would give us the beginnings of the look of an expanded flat with our 1618 up back towards these highs. And all of a sudden we have this beautiful looking range where we come up, take these lows, take these highs, put in our wave B into a wave C, which would be expanded in this variation, take the lows again, deeper correction, probably looks like a breakdown, reclaim, and then we could send our way back up to these major highs, up at $32, the 1618 extension up there. Right into this region, the non-log GP would be aligned around there. It looks quite clean to me. So anyways, this really speculative, got to see how this all forms, but I think it's kind of reasonable to be looking for ideas to trade around the POC here under these lows, sweep this low, reclaim it, and there might be some nice setups targeting these local highs a little higher, and you get the GP here. Sweep these, reject into the range lows. Might get a nice clean invalidation short set up there. Along the range lows into the range highs. Just play this as a range. And then if all of this played out, I would look to long this up through the highs of the range. We come break out of, so we have a big breakout, the third retest of these highs. Big move to the upside, fakes out, and that sends us into major new lows. So that's what I'm looking at now. I think it looks cleaner with this as a 3-way. I don't really see why you would count it another way at this point. Not that there's internally not other counts, but I don't see how you'd look at this as not corrective. So anyways, that is what I'm looking at on Trump. If something totally different happens, then I'll adjust that perspective. But I guess I would say I'm taking it step by step. Got these lows at the POC, these highs. Going to look to trade between those. If we break out of them, then I'm not in those trades. If we break down, I'm not in that trade. Trading range low, range high, range low. All right. You know, look at XRP. Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards this just looking like the setup I'm interested in XRP. I do have a short running up here. But we break out of this, things get kind of interesting. But yeah, taking these lows, that's the setup I'm interested in on XRP, targeting towards new all-time highs. If we break out of this, then I'll be looking at something else. But just want to note, I was looking for something very similar here, and that did not play out. I actually took this short up at this wick. Get a nice rejection, about 12%, but I was looking for lower, either into this triangle, or to what I liked at the time was to take all these lows, similar to Bitcoin. I liked the idea of taking all of the lows before another leg up. So we did end up breaking up to the upside, and we did end up taking all of the lows. It just looks much cleaner for another leg up to wipe out all, see the big volume there, wipe out all of that liquidity under these lows. It's the level I had marked out to take. But anyways, we've taken those lows, and I'm not anticipating that the most likely scenario has to be taking this wick again on XRP. Similar to Doge. We're testing this trend line right now. It's kind of interesting. If that holds up, we have this like really aggressive local downtrend on the 4-hour. I was looking at this the other day too. It's a super clean downtrend here. This was forming on the lower time frames. There was a couple different trending structures in here, but very clean. But anyways, I probably, what I would like to see is I would like to see the bigger move to the downside on Bitcoin, because it would just make all of this much easier on alts. Come take all these lows. Same on ETH. To me, it just looks cleaner, right? It looks cleaner than just strong continuation, but it's very possible. Ultimately, it really depends what Bitcoin decides to do. So I would say this. I'll probably, like I said, I might get live every day this week. I might look for some local setups this week. Like this doesn't look bearish by any means on Cardano. We're just out resistance with these highs. But for now, I'm just gonna say I'm definitely interested in longs if we can come and take these lows, and probably worth keeping an eye on all of this. It doesn't look particularly bearish, but that can change really quickly if we just keep rejecting from these highs. Really important resistance. Litecoin, probably just going to be playing off the POC for continuation. GP's right around there, right under it. Come back down to these lows. I guess taking these lows would be, it's kind of a region. Taking these lows would be kind of cleaner. Yeah, this does not look. See, this kind of looks, this looks a little nasty right now, locally on the 1 hour versus Cardano. Like this, you kind of have, it's not hard to imagine scenarios where we see lower here with this kind of, this trending structure here. It looks like price wants to roll over, obviously point out straight down. It's not hard to imagine finding our way back down into this level here. I think something that people go wrong with is, say for example, Litecoin's been really weak. So they might think, well, there's no way there's no way Litecoin goes down more than one of these other altcoins and retraces more than one of these other altcoins, or is weaker than one of these other altcoins. But that's not really how it works in my view. I mean, Litecoin could easily come and make this retracement without Cardano making a similar, I'm just using an example, a similar relatively deep retracement, because the structure is completely different, right? We pushed up and took major highs. But I'm going to be looking at price back down here. It's not unreasonable. I'd have to look at this a little bit more. But I think this could play as a 1-2. Somebody asked if it's unreasonable to look at this rally on Cardano as corrective. But I don't think it's so unreasonable to look at this as 1, 2, then looking for a 1, 2, 1. But let's just say, for example, let's just say that I had equally compelling reasons to think ADA was heading towards 12 cents and this was corrective, and we weren't heading towards even these highs, let alone anywhere near all-time highs. It wouldn't necessarily stop me from trying some clean long setups. Because the best way to look at it is like this. It's like, let's say you have, I'm just using a hypothetical here, but let's just say you have two competing ideas. One that's really bearish on Cardano and one that's really bullish. And you have the choice between playing the major levels or not, where the ideas are sort of at their crossroads, right? So let's just say this is the long setup for the really bullish idea. And you don't take it because you favor the really bearish idea. Let's not even talk about any shorts you may or may not take or be in, just the long setup towards, new highs. It's just some arbitrary new high, not all-time highs, just creating a scenario here. Well, if you're wrong and you're using risk management, you lose $30. And if you're right, you make $1 or you save $1. And so that's the hard thing about some of these asymmetric ideas in the swing trades, is because let's just so my only point here is, let's just say that you view this as corrective and you're not willing to take any longs because you're looking for 12 cents. You have to almost be 30 times more sure or 20 times more sure. It has to be like 20 times more likely to be the case because of the asymmetry of some of the setups. So that's the only tough thing. about. Like for Trump here, ideally what I want to do is hopefully I can find some setups that are going to work in some of the bearish ideas and the bullish ideas. And I might trim off some of the position more aggressively than I otherwise might have. But you can end up trading, looking for setups to trade towards both. This doesn't... I probably don't lean towards this being way big. I talked about ETH a little earlier, near the start of the live stream. I think Doge is very likely to be going towards all-time highs. And again, even Doge doesn't look particularly bearish here either. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Doge is something that I step in and start trading on the lower time frames. For example, we do have a trend line, a local trend line breaking out right now that we've been getting tested right now. I'm already kind of thinking about some of these setups. Grab some nice lows. Because what I want to do, ideally, is play... if I'm gonna play some longs here, like one of the reasons that I said earlier that it's hard to be interested in Bitcoin. It's like if I'm gonna play some longs here across all the alts, which I was looking to play longs on Trump and I missed them, but some of those would have been, some of you guys caught some of this move. I'd like to catch something like that. Catch a 50% move to the upside in several hours. It's just hard to be that interested in like, okay, I'm going to spend a bunch of time scalping and setting up longs here and trying to get position on Bitcoin. If I'm going to do it, I'd probably do it on something like Doge or Cardano. But let's, I just want to point out again, this idea here, why did it just escape my head? Oh yeah, it's just look how different the charts are, right? So this is Litecoin's daily chart, and this is Doge's daily chart. So it's just this setup would be targeting much higher. Coming down and retesting this as well. Took these daily lows. Yeah, probably more interested in trying setups around Doge locally. If I get stopped out of those, I get stopped out, but picking and choosing here. Even arguably ADA looking a little more interesting. But hopefully I'm going to be finding myself in a Doge setup that looks something like this here. and looking for some strong continuation. We left some local highs intact as well. So even this setup works in that context. Something like a 6.6R setup. But one reason I'm probably long a retest or something. We have these bearish divergences forming on Bitcoin, holiday weekend. Maybe we can come and get one more rundown into these lows. I might look to trade it around the lows. As far as daily structure goes, it's just kind of looks kind of clean. Just come and run these daily lows. Get another move up to the upside. This looks not so bad to me. Let me look at where is this? Someone asking what I think of Pepe. I would like to, similar to what I was talking about on ETH, like if we can come and fill this wick and actually just take this low, I'd like to trade this back up to the highs. I'd be interested in taking shorts up there, back towards the lows. It's so funny. I don't know why this happens, but like something like Pepe, I guess it's become such like a staple meme. It's like a blue chip meme, I guess, in people's minds. And so even when I suggested up here this idea of a move to the downside, it's just like people saying like you obviously don't know anything about the market. But it's like LOL, you've just lost all credibility. Thinking that this is going to happen to Pepe. But it's like, really? Is that where we're at here? Mentally, it's like people are like, you think Pepe is going down 80, 90%? You've lost all credibility. It's going straight up forever. It's just kind of funny. Anyway, so I think there's probably some setups here. Like this is a big move. This is 130, 140%. If we can come tag this low, and this was the target for the short, and this is the target, although I covered this short a little early. This was my long target from back here before the 60% move. And this is the exact chart I drew out. So anyways, I'd like to come tag this low. I'll take a nice tight setup for a long up towards these highs, and then I'll look to short again. And I'm going to be looking to short towards, this looks really bad, a breakdown of all this structure. So hopefully we get a nice rally, another chance to get into a swing short. I actually talked about this at the time, that you're not really looking, when you're looking for a setup from here, you're not really looking to hold your short all the way down like this. You're looking to take profits on the short. Maybe you're going to flip into a long, get into a new short up higher. And even if, of course, if this long prints, that'd be beautiful. You get it short, you get long, and this short doesn't work, it doesn't really matter, right? It's like you printed 2 beautiful trades and you're on to new ideas. But ideally, we can form some kind of downtrend here. And I would like to short into this and look for this all to go. These lows obviously going to be a major target, but I think once those come, this comes fairly quickly or fairly easily. There's no structure here, right? As long as we're trading below this, this is certainly on the table, and it's just not hard for me to envision this coming relatively quickly or easily. So anyways, could be wrong, but I'm already right enough to be happy about the idea. Congrats, Jordan. Jordan says that Pepe short was the best one I've ever had, 4,600%. Beautiful. Yeah, I'll just show it just because it's kind of, you know what, it's worth just looking at really quickly, because when you look at what I had to say compared to the current chart, I can find it pretty easily. So that's kind of interesting too. All right, so this is back on New Year's. This is the Pepe chart. So I was actually just looking at Pepe, and as somebody who spends thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours, and looking at thousands of charts over history, the last 100 years, there's just something about this. When I looked at the naked chart, it just reminds me of the beginning of a downtrend. And so before I had even pulled any levels, I just said, I'm going to spend some more time on the Pepe chart, fleshing out some ideas, but I just was staring at the blink chart and can't help thinking we might be in for something like this, using 2021, 2022 FTM chart for frame of reference. So this is back up before we had that 60% sell-off to this current pivot low, right? I actually have a slight front run drawn there. Maybe that's impending. Anyways, just like right around here is where you think there's no way, and then the whole thing sells off another 93%. So anyways, I said I'll explain my thoughts in more depth later, but I have actually opened up a short here on Pepe. Just a really tight short, right at the Pico top, really tight stop right above the wick, targeting these lows. So then I annotated my basic thoughts. I said my basic thoughts annotated here. As we're at the log scale GP, I'm just going to short this, and we'll be willing to look for a long at our major log scale GP and impulse origin 60% lower into a retest of the major SR and future hypothetical GP, which I will then swing short again. So just looking, we get some nice confluence here, right? Come tap this low, it's our 618. We actually did tap that level cleanly, the top of the 618. Targeting this is where we tapped, back up towards this high. This would give us a new 618 and potential downtrend starting here. Then look to short that into the major lows. So anyways, kind of interesting. Because that's what happened. Not all my ideas work like that. I had the bright idea of staggering some limit orders here over the weekend because I was not going to be available on Pepe. And the idea was that this looked quite bullish and clean, and I was willing to be long into this trending structure. As long as this high, previous high was holding, I was willing to be long into this retracement. And of course, longs filled, stopped, we ranged, and we broke down. So probably could have just held off. Typically, I don't trade weekends. And typically, I'm not going to lay limit orders like that. So anyways, there's an idea that didn't work. This actually ended up not looking that great. Like if you're on the charts here, we ended up just flipping, breaking down, not reclaiming. We had some little GP wicks rejecting, and this started looking kind of shitty, really shitty into the end of the weekend. Okay, I want to catch up on some comments because I haven't been following them. I'll read through them quickly. Someone says, damn, 190 viewers. A lot of people missed the stream. Probably not the best time, like a Monday morning this early for North America. But usually the live streams get like 1,500, 2,000 views by the end. People come and watch them. Someone says, lucky, I see so many possibilities in a chart that I end up taking all the ideas at once, but instead of focusing on one, I trade 4 to 5 ideas at the same time. I end up losing on 4 trades. Yeah, so that's worth talking about. It's actually something I talk about a lot. I'm not sure if you're a member in the Discord or not, but if you are, you maybe have heard me mention just the correlation of the market. The problem is, and the reason you have to be really careful if you're trading more than one coin, is that the market's super correlated. So if the market's dumping, say we have a big flash crash, this would be really, really important if you were high leverage or quote unquote low leverage with no stop loss. You know, you're 5x long on this, 5x long on this, 10x long on that. Everything's going to crash together. The same applies to most of the time, but the same applies to even if you're using stop losses, right? So for example, if you're wanting to risk 2% per trade, but you're long at the longing 5 alts, you're 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%, you're 10% risk really on random altcoins, because the odds of your stops getting taken, if one gets taken, the odds that they're all going to get taken is kind of high. It's kind of like all your trades are either going to work or they're not going to work. There's some exceptions, of course, and it depends how you're trading. But so you need to be really careful with your sizing. So there's certainly a benefit from a, let's say, a focus perspective, just focusing on 1 or 2 assets that you're trading or setups that you're trading. So maybe you have like a premier setup on XRP. That's the only thing you're interested in trading. Otherwise, you're not looking at the chart. Maybe on another coin, maybe on Bitcoin, and then maybe you're scalping something. Otherwise, you might want to be looking to really reduce the amount of risk you have per setup if you're trading 4 or 5 alts. And it could help you perform better too if you're paying more attention to one chart. That's not always true, by the way. For example, I mean, you would think, like, I actually I was long on Bitcoin at the same time as I was short on Pepe, and well, Bitcoin eventually worked its way to an all-time high. Pepe dropped 60%, and Bitcoin still hasn't even tested that low yet. So it can happen that you're in a long and a short and both work somehow, but that's pretty rare. Someone asking, how often do you look at CVD for entries? Or do you use it all the time? I'm always looking at order flow when I'm taking entries. Like something like this, you have these big high delta wicks are nice. It's basically just saying like, hey, a bunch of stops just got taken. Like sometimes you'll see, like for example, this would just, if I was long here, I would close it. If I'm not saying we can't go higher, we've had bearish divergences. If I had longed these lows and this little sweep of this low and I was targeting these highs, I would close it just because of this. It's not very often in this local range we're seeing these big bearish divergences. We've gotten a few of them. Like here's one that formed locally and then ended up flushing out into these lows. Yeah, I'd be paying attention to order flow through the life of my trade, and certainly around entries, nice high volume, high delta wicks. So let's, what's the best way to say this? It's not that every high volume, it's not that every high volume move, high delta move is a major low or a major high, but every major high and major low is a high volume, high delta move, if that makes sense. Like you see this, 28 million, 91 million in this candle, 91 million delta, big increase in open interest. You see the big spike in CVD. It's very rare that you're going to find a major high that doesn't have some of these characteristics. This is a big short run, 75 million delta, a big high delta, high volume candle. So I guess I would say that like if you're looking to take a trade with the idea of, it's not like a 2-minute trade scalp, targeting some major structural component of price, if you're in a long off of a level and there's just no volume and no delta in that wick, it's probably a lot less likely to be a significant higher low. And you can kind of see some of the intention in price too with some of these. I mean, this isn't that high delta, to be honest. But anyways, this is essentially, you know, if you're a trader, if you're scalping this is essentially a short setup. I mean, within order flow. Doesn't mean price can't go higher. It's just, it's the type of thing you're looking to short around, and look to structure shorts on. And it might resolve quickly, right? Sometimes it does. Sometimes this resolves with just the local lows being taken. Sometimes it gets more and more aggressive longs are opening into the downtrend and you get a big move to the downside. But one thing we've seen here that's been a little bit of a challenge is just massive bullish divergences ultimately forming here as price has gone lower. I don't know if we'll be able to see them on here, but they're, let me go to the 1 hour chart really quick just to get a sense of the, actually I don't think this goes far enough back in time. I don't have the settings for that. Yeah, unfortunately I don't. But let's just say relative to this range, basically CVD's just been going straight down as dramatically as you could possibly imagine. So just a lot of aggressive market selling. And I'd say on the medium time frames, that's one of the main reasons that I'm bullish towards all-time highs. I think structurally, and I think a big move to the upsides is coming eventually. It's just a matter of if we take these lows, if we don't, of course anything's possible. We could break down, in which case, like, just to give you a sense of how I would trade this personally, if Bitcoin comes down into these lows, like this is a premier long setup for me. I'm going to be chasing those in with longs. But if price breaks down, I'm not just going to hold this long, because even though it feels, I'd rather just cut it and look for a new setup. Because even though it feels impossible, like we're not going to 50K, we're not going to 25K. Like you can be 2x long all in here. Your liquidation's not going to get hit. Just, oh shit. You just lost everything. Why the fuck didn't I just cut this when this broke down? Right? Like it really is, as much as this looks impossible, because I think that's what people think. Like when they're thinking like, why would you even stop out this trade? Like even if price goes a little lower, it's just going to go back up. It's not going to 50K. But it's, in my mind, I don't think like that. I mean, you don't have to spend that much time trading this shit to come to the conclusion that can happen, and your liquidation's not safe-oo. I'd way rather just cut and trade it down here as a new setup, because there's no structure here, right? Like price flips this, I would say, I mean, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but if price flips this and never gets back above it, like you're in a trade, price isn't flipping this, what's going to happen? It's sort of like a long trigger is like, I'd be long on a reclaim here, but if price isn't reclaiming it, well, there's no structure here. It's like, oh, well, it's going to bounce somewhere, right? So anyways, that's how I look at price. I look at this as just a void of structure. If we don't hold this up, I think price can move quite quickly through here. There's some ideas down towards 67, 70K that don't look bad. We're like big level on the volume profile into this impulse low, potentially some trending structure. But between this, and this, it can get pretty messy. That's just my 2 cents. It's not worth talking about every day, right? I'm not going to sit here and be like, guys, just remember this could always happen. This might always happen, but I'm certainly trading that way. Someone says, Lucky, you know what I think is impressive? Looking at your trading style, you seem to be only interested in charts and ideas. You seem completely unfazed of any news. How comes that? I don't read the news. Easy. I don't even know what's going on in the world. I know, like, every once in a while, someone tries to assassinate a president, or maybe a new war is starting. I'm just kidding. But I personally don't think, at least for myself, that I have any edge in trading the news. Especially, like, you get some volatility maybe around a news event, but still, that's all technically structured trades. So it's like I'm not going to be able to sit there and deduce the geopolitical landscape and be like, and you know what? That's going to make Pepe do this. And from my experience, not most people do. I mean, it's sort of like, you could say, in the same way that you could say that trades are just like a coin flip, like it might work, it might not, and you're structuring a trade with a stop loss, you don't know what's going to happen. You can kind of say the same thing probably with news, but the problem is the news doesn't tell me where to buy, when to cut, how to structure my trade. The charts can tell me all of that, right? With the chart, I can know how to set up my trade. I can't get a news event. Even if I'm trading off a news event, I still need the chart, right? I need, how am I structuring this trade? Is my invalidation really just news? So like if I long some news event here and this starts happening, I just keep the radio cranked to full and hope that somebody tells me if new news comes out that invalidates my trade. And then if this starts happening, I'm just in the trade, because no, you need to still structure your trade somehow, and the news doesn't really tell you how to do that. And if you really are just long until your news event plays out, then you have to be so certain that you've read the impact of this news event on your probably shitcoin, but Bitcoin, whatever the asset is, that you're just holding it indefinitely on this thesis. And it's like your risk reward ratio is kind of messed up there. Because you get it wrong once, it could be in a lot of trouble. I think most people who think they're trading news events are just getting scared or excited by, I mean, news can be a catalyst for some volatility, for some price action, but it's just, I don't think it's improving most people's trading. Someone asks, how do you handle spot trades? If I spot trade with 100K, for example, and have an invalidation, then you could easily lose 10 to 20K. You surely got to handle it differently than day trades. Well, you say you can easily lose 10 to 20K. Let's put it this way. What about a spot trade makes this any different than anything else? I've talked about this a lot, but I'm going to talk about it again. People think being in spot is like somehow changes the risk profile of the trade. It changes it from like being 10x leverage all in with no stop loss. But let's not compare it to the most ridiculous scenario. And let's just say if you have 100K and you're in a 10x $10,000 trade, so you have a $100,000 position, and your stop loss is here. You're going to lose $5,000 when your stop loss gets hit. The only reason there's some more intricate reasons to use leverage, but the primary reason would be if you have 100K and you don't want to put 100K on some shady, unregulated exchange, and it doesn't even have to be that shady. It could be the premier exchange that goes under, the one that everybody's using. Then you put a small fraction of your 100K and you use leverage. And you can just leverage up the position to be the appropriate size for your trading account without putting all your capital at risk on that exchange. So anyways, that said, you're going to lose, cutting this trade at a loss here, you're going to lose the same amount whether it's you're using leverage or your spot. And if you think that spot means you just don't have to have any invalidation, I'm not even saying you need to use a hard stop, but spot doesn't mean that you're just safe. I mean, I think most people would say you're safe to buy and hold spot here eventually. I mean, I'd say you have good odds of getting out okay. But you know what else can happen? Fast forward 3 years. Oh, you were going to be a trader? You want to get out of break even? And you just lock up all your capital for years. So anyways, I would just say that if you want to risk 1% of your spot account, you can still use some kind of invalidation with spot and just size appropriately. You don't need to put in this position $100,000 into the position, right? You can put a smaller amount in. And of course, this is so true with alts, right? I mean, I did a post. I'm not gonna dig up all these charts. I did a post that the top 10 highest volume altcoins of 2021, they all went down like 99% and flatlined. And the month there were at the peak of the bull market. Somebody said to me, you know, somebody, what did they say to me about Pepe? They commented something like, you really, this is at the highs, by the way. They're like, you think that the coin with the highest volume is going to go straight down? Something like that. But it's like, well, yeah. Go sort by highest volume at the peak of the bull market. Highest volume coins. They all went down 99% from their highest volume weeks, right? So it's like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. You're going to buy all these random shit coins and think you're safe in spot, and then 5 years later, they're down 95% and you're still holding them. And you think, well, I haven't realized the loss. I just lost $95,000 of my $100,000. I'm just sitting in this position until it somehow pumps 5,000% back to all-time highs, 10,000%. So anyways, it's kind of like saying that like no one who ever just bought stocks lost money, although you could say no one who's ever bought the index has lost money. And it's just simply not true. All right. Can zoom in on order flow here. I'll look at Solana. Someone's asked me a couple times. But like I said, not a super long live stream today. Actually, maybe it has been long. I don't even know where the timer is on this thing. Must have been an hour. Apparently, clean up this chart a bit. Well, it's kind of clean. It's like a little trend line breakout here. Retest. I mean, if we get the move down on Bitcoin, let's just be real. Like you kind of, I haven't been trading Solana that much. Probably if you're staring at this chart every day and you're really bullish, you kind of want to catch the next trade up to all-time highs. All of this looks interesting. To me, not so much. I would have to say I want this set up. Just take all these lows. Take all these lows into the trend line. Just target some of the position to the all-time high. Carry the rest. Certainly trade this a little tighter. I mean, this looks super clean on Sol. Probably want to be looking to trade both of these. That's what I'm going to do. This is a really easy way to approach the charts because it doesn't take a lot of time. Just thinking like it, because I don't care about Solana. So I might miss like this could be really clean. Nice clean little sweep, but it's just like, oh yeah, I would definitely be interested in this and this. And then set alerts. And if you get them, you take those trades, or maybe you've put some limit orders down there or something. And it's not that crazy of a thing to suspect we might see. I'd actually say it's probably likely that either of these are coming. But even if not likely, I don't need to only trade. I like trading around some unlikely events, let's say. I think let me just pull this up. I like pulling up some things. I'm going to okay. I'm finding an old conversation in the Discord back last year. I was just saying back when I was looking for this move on ETH, because I was looking for this move, it was just funny because people, like, I said in the ETH updates channel in the Discord, like, this is basically my ETH updates. I just wasn't updating ETH for a long time. And I just said, I'm having a hard time at being interested in anything on ETH except for this. Like, I'm not updating the channel. I don't really care anything but this long setup if I get it. And then my next update is this, right? So it's like, that's kind of sometimes how I feel about positions where, like, people want, let me see if I can find where I just was. This is me talking about that Pepe trade earlier. How did I just lose that? Anyways, just when I post the idea, people are talking to me like it's insane, like it's crazy, it's never going to happen. And I could just say even that, like, okay, maybe it's not that likely, but it's the only trade I'm interested in. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I actually think it's likely too. Like, it's the trade I'm interested in, and it's actually something I think is likely, even though it doesn't. I understand why people don't think it looks likely, but I do not understand why they think it looks impossible. That's what I don't get about setups like that. Like, it's one thing to be like, no, I don't think we're gonna go that low. I think we'll bounce from here. I'm gonna long from here. It's like, that's fine. You know, there's other long setups, and you know, you take a stop loss. It is what it is. But people who think it's impossible, and to me, I said, obviously I don't know if it will come. In lots of scenarios it doesn't, but I would say I consider it more likely than not. I can understand people, I'm repeating what I wrote. But anyways, but you know, people saying things like, what? We haven't even hit all-time high yet. So like, people build up these ideas in their head, right? We haven't even hit all-time high. How's that going to happen? That would mean alts would have to go down so much. That's not going to happen. So they've built this, like, this self-fulfilling loop, this prophecy of it can't happen, because if it happened, then it would happen. And it's not going to happen because something else is going to happen. But anyways. So that being said, on Sol, to me, this all looks likely. But if not likely, then it's just what I'm interested in. Like, nothing here looks very appealing to me. Other than that, that's the best way I could put it. You can also do quite well trading that way. You basically think of the setups like, hey, I don't know if this can happen or not. I don't know if it will happen. But what is the setup like? If you could get this, you'd be so happy to trade it. And maybe even put it a little bit outside of what your natural realm of possibility is. And if it's something like this ETH setup, you know, maybe it's something like, oh yeah, if we could come back down and run into all these lows, I'd love to take a long down here and set up that trade. and then just do that on a bunch of charts. Yeah, there's no New York Open today. I honestly think Doge looks kind of interesting here. I don't really want to turn this into a low time frame scalping trade or live stream, but I mentioned earlier, this looks quite interesting on Doge on a breakout. Get some kind of retest or something. Towards all-time highs. Works towards these highs, but you know, I think there's probably some bullish outcomes from here. Like I said earlier, even for Bitcoin, just don't feel like trading Bitcoin here as the main bullish ideas. I think Doge looks much more interesting. What do I think of what is going to happen to altcoins in the coming months? I don't know. It's a pretty broad question. I think probably some are going to pump and some are going to dump. I'm kind of bullish on Doge and XRP and Cardano on the medium time frames. All right, guys. I'm gonna probably get live tomorrow again, so we'll do a lot of live streams this week. Some of them will just be members live streams. Some of them will be public live streams, but we'll be in touch. Doge looks kind of interesting. Peace.